So please welcome Krzysztof and go ahead.
Okay. So I wanted to tell you why I'm excited about Saleor apps. So for the record, I've been in Mirumi for 5 years, and I've been doing pretty much a bit of everything. I started as a backend, then I played with DevOps, then I changed to front-end part, and right now I'm a dev relationship developer. And I really like to play around with tools for each of those parts. In my presentation, there will be lots of memes, so be prepared, and also cats. So let's start with the problem we have with Saleor, or rather we had. So Saleor is a headless e-commerce platform, which is totally open source. You can configure it, it's really flexible, and you can host it however you like. So the main part is a backend part, which we call core. It's application written in Python. We're using Django framework, and GraphQL layer is powered by Graphene. Front-end parts are written in TypeScript, and they are using React and Apollo client, both their botnet storefront. And the last thing which is emerging is our software as a service, which we call Saleor Cloud, where we will be hosting our API, and clients will bring their own front end, and we'll be creating shops for them. So at Mirumi, we tend to choose bigger clients where we establish long-term relationships. These are mostly big companies, which has shops in many countries. They sell in many currencies. They use a lot of different payment gateways. There's also complicated warehousing and shipping methods. And also, every one of them has different CMS. So we have to find a way how to long-term maintain their projects. And what we used to do is a forking approach. So we just clone the repository, take developers and requirements, and we start changing it. If you know the code base, then it's easy to start, and you can change everything you want, however you like, and what your client needs. But it has few cons. You need to be very precise with your Git history. Also, you need to document what you've changed in your fork. Because when there's some new person in your team which has only experience with open source version, you have to synchronize what's changed and why. Also, sometimes there can be changes in the upstream which may affect your code, your changes. So you have to consider that, how to plan your features to be easy to change in the future. And updating process also needs some time. So we have to take that in consideration when you plan budget with your client. And we all know how maintenance is easy to take with clients. And most important thing is it won't work for our Saleor Cloud. We will rather not allow users to run their own code on our servers. And we have two solutions to address that. First is the plugins. Created internal API, which is documented, and developers can, using that, create their own plugins, which will be run on their own servers. And there are apps, which are cooler, I think. Those are separate applications which are communicating with the core using webhooks and GraphQL API. And at this point, I wanted to give a shout out to Maciej Koryciński, who is right now working on new features for our apps. He's our founding father. Okay, so like I said, you can have multiple deployed apps. Some can be just consumers of webhooks of those payloads, for example, for reporting. When you have to synchronize with stocks, you need to be a middleman between core and external service. You can also use app just to add more data to your models in Saleor core. So what's interesting, a webhook manager is also a Saleor plugin, and it's just a pops up where manager registers apps and topics they want to listen to. So those events could be, for example, that checkout changed, products are modified, there are new accounts, stuff like that. And when those events occur, there are two ways. First, which is already implemented, we asynchronously call apps and inform them about the changes. And Maciek is working right now on a new interface which will allow you to create synchronous apps for example, payment gateways. So you want to create app. So first thing you need is a manifest file. It's a file which describes your application. There's a list of permissions. Sorry for my cat if you hear him. It has lists of permissions, so application are a restricted scope of data of your server. And there's also sections for legal documents and URLs for configuration view. We have possibility to display configuration view in our dashboard as an iframe. Also, your app has to expose at least one endpoint, which is register, which core use to introduce yourself. Token is exchanged and app is added. So security, like I said, we display configuration views in our dashboard. And if user interacts with those components, we add user's JWT token to the requests. So your app can validate that user has this needed scope for changes. And regarding webhooks, if you want to be sure that you are not running requests from unwanted clients, during the webhook registration, the secret is exchanged. So if Saleor sends any payload, we add secret, so you know it's a right API. Like I said earlier, apps have defined permissions, so they have only access to the scope you need. And you can also deploy your applications in your own private network, so those won't be exposed. And I got really excited with apps because that sounded cool. So the first app I've created was Algolia integration for one of our clients. Algolia is a pretty powerful search provider. which has a great UI and dashboards for defining of the search. And we wanted to push their data about products and pages and other CMS data. And that's how the dashboard in Saleor looks like in the apps section. At the top, you can see the application we are talking about. So if you click on it, there's a preview how the configuration view can look like. We decided that in this application, you can change tokens for the Algolia, so you don't need to set it up in, for example, environment vars. And you can change dynamically list of languages. For example, you want to send to Algolia. Also, we added buttons for reindexing all the products if needed. And there's another view where you can check the permissions for the app, read about data policy of provider of the app, and short description. And on the Algolia side, that's how those data look like. You have lots of switches you can choose and define how to make your searching experience more relevant. In this app, we choose Python as a language. And we wanted something small and fast, so we used Fast API, which is really fast web framework. It supports async. It's really easy to get into. It's similar to Flask, I would say. And the first version of application was delivered in days. We probably spent more time deciding about how do we want to deploy it, because clients wanted to choose different platform that we have our Saleor, and it wasn't any problem because from the apps and Saleor perspective, you can choose whatever platform you want. You can choose even serverless, which could be very cost effective. And I was pleased. That application was success, very fast. Everything was working, but then client wanted to add more data. And that data was not in the payload. So we have to regroup. Thankfully, we have GraphQL, so we didn't need to create new REST endpoint. We didn't need to change anything on the backend side. We just rewrite our application. From the payload, we were taking IDs of products that changed, and we fetched all the data we needed. We had a whole API exposed, so we could use whatever we want. Pricing, translations, everything was there. To parse responses from the server, we used a library called Marshmallow to ensure it's with the schema. And it was pretty much refactored in one session. It was easy thing to do. And that was big thing for me, because it proved itself. Maintaining that was really easy. There's a small scope of the application where any developer can go through in the matter of minutes. There is no need of checking out all the changes you have in your own fork. You don't need to take into account any things that are specific for this project. This application could be plugged into any other Saleor application. And one of the situations really opened my eyes when we had an issue which we had to debug. And to do that, we just started local environment on our machine. We use ngrok to expose it to the outside world, and we install it as just a normal app on the production, and we could use any debugger we liked. So that was easy to fix. And after this Algolia app, I wanted something more. I wanted to play around with new tools. So I decided to write little application for translations. We have translation dashboard in our dashboard, but clients sometimes use external platforms like Transifex or POE editor, and I choose the POE editor because it has generous free dev plan and API looked good. Writing in Python was okay, but from the work on the front end, I've seen how cool it is to have TypeScript compiler shouting at you when you are writing bugs in your code. So I wanted types. So TypeScript was chosen for this project. And since there will be configuration view, so I need some front-end framework. But I wanted to play around with Next.js, which is not only for the front-end, but also supports reading APIs and server-side code. And I really like their examples repository. It's a great starting point to just integrate Next.js with any CMS, any service you like. And it blew my mind how things look like on the JavaScript, TypeScript part. Apparel client is very easy to use. It's a very powerful client. It has configurable caching. Using query hooks on the front-end part is so easy. And also you can use it on the server part for example, server-side rendering. Speaking of tools, VS Code integration is great because there's a Apollo plugin which can read your queries you write in your TypeScript. It can, if you use Apollo server, you can even have annotations how long particular fields are executing. And the last thing which made me the most excited was CodeGen, GraphQL code generator. You write GraphQL and you get fully documented TypeScript. If your schema has good descriptions, then you will see those in the TypeScript code. It has many plugins. For example, for Apollo hooks, you don't need to anymore write boilerplate for typed queries. It can be generated automatically with documentation. And there's also helpers for server-side rendering with Next.js. There's some screenshot of the code of application. There's a webhook mutation in GQL tag. As you can see, it's a TypeScript, so you can import fragments from other files, and those fragments also are compiled to the classes by CodeGen, and you can reuse them also in your logic. Here's another view of the registration view. As I mentioned earlier, we have TypeScript, we have Next.js, which is async. So we can return response to the user early and do other things on the backend to not keep him hanging. The mutation I use is fully typed, so every variable I would like to pass to this mutation is typed. The enums are also generated, so there's no chance for any typos. And there's a preview how the introspection look like. You have full knowledge about every field in your code. And I had really a lot of fun implementing that. So takeouts from those apps I've already created. So GraphQL it works great, not only for front-end side where you can query whatever you like, but also for communication between applications. And app architecture leads to small designated apps, which are really easy to maintain, really to port to another project. And you're not tied to any ecosystem. Choose any language you like, even the most obscure ones. Choose whatever platform you would like to deploy. There's no difference for us. We can handle everyone. And I've made a little QA for the end with myself. So if you're interested in writing apps, and there's a repository I've created, it's a simple repository. We'll be working on implementing more examples. And documentation you can find at docs.saleor.io. So this question was asked earlier, if we can extend API. So here's the Apollo Federation, which would allow that. And you can also choose Hasura for schema stitching to solve this problem. I recommend their blog. They have nice posts about how to pull it off. And few tips for creating apps. Embrace asynchronous execution, return early, and you can handle long-running jobs without blocking the client for the response. It's very important, especially if you communicate with external service and you need to wait for a response from them. I would advise to create some kind of logging in your dashboard view. It's really good to know that everything is working as intended or if there are any issues. So a little bit of logs will make your life easier. And if execution any of the jobs is crucial for you, don't just use event loop, use proper queue like Amazon SQS. And the last thing, metadata. Metadata and Saleor are key value dictionaries, which we have in many of the models. Part of them is private, which means that only staff users can use them, and also apps. And there are private metadata, which can be queried by everyone. So you can add, for example, more descriptions for your products if there's no field in schema, which would you like to see. You can use metadata to synchronize few apps between them and have all the source of truth in the Saleor. And plans for the future regarding of apps. Soon we will have asynchronous apps, so you'll be able to create application for new payment methods. Also, it will be useful for creating different shipment providers. As I mentioned earlier, we'll be preparing the marketplace where everybody could publish their own applications. And we are working on developer experience with creating apps. So there will be new repositories with starter packs, and we are planning to add some kind of logging to the apps in those. And that's it.
Thanks, Krzysztof, for your presentation. Was that the cut that we heard during your presentation that you showed on the last slide?
No. That was the second cut. I'm surprised this one was so loud. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no problem. He had a lot of comments about your presentation. Actually, yeah. So do we have any questions? So yeah, First question from Michał. What is the name of the second speaker that we heard in the background?
Okay, that was the nachos, and the second one is called, the white one is called XOR.
All right, so now to more serious questions. We have a question from Marcin. Apps sounds great. Have you thought about using AWS Event Bridge for extending integrations?
I haven't read much about Event Bridge, but we can, our applications can use webhooks, which are HTTP requests, but also you could subscribe to a queue channel like SQS. And I've read that Event Bridge is also using SQS, so it's really familiar. Maybe it solves the same problem. So maybe we are faster than Shopify with their apps.
Cool. So I'm not familiar with Event Bridge as well, but as you were presenting, I'm not sure if that was mentioned, but I was wondering if you could serverless to build Saleor apps, for example, like AWS Lambda, for example.
Of course. You can choose whatever platform you like. So serverless could be good for something which is not called very often. So you won't be paying for the idle time of your server. Just you can create API using serverless, and it will be handled just fine.
Cool. Okay, I think we don't have any more questions. So thank you, Krzysztof, for your presentation.